Hello, my name is Patricio Forno. I am the President and Principal of AccelerateIBD, and today, in collaboration with Cosmoprof Worlwide Bologna, I'll talk about how to screen a potential distributor. So, what do you want to ask to a potential distributor? Their experience. What are the companies they have worked with and companies they are working with currently? How many companies, for instance, are they working with? Do they work with the sub-distributors? Do they work with retailers? Do they have different geographical areas? Do they work with companies that are related to the government? Do they work with chains? So it's important for you to understand which kinds of companies they have experience with. Now, the business type and size, retailer or distributors, is very different if you work with a retailer than a distributor. Retailers, for instance, they will require a different marketing way of working with them. They are much more tough in their timelines, and you need to have the things ready for them. Distributors, what is the relationship they have with their accounts, or what are their main accounts? Then distribution channels, how knowledgeable and what is the market experience that a potential distributor has with the distribution channels? In how many are they present within your industry? Do they know the details of each of those? Do they know the logistics of each of the distribution channels? Competitors, do they know well their competitors? Very important. Now, the infrastructure and logistics. Do they how is their, I don't know, their warehouse? Where is it located? Is it good in relation to where your product will be going or arriving in a different market? Is it big enough? Does it have space for growth? Does it have a climate control? Is it climate control? Sorry, if it's something necessary for your product. How well located it is in relation to shipping timings to your potential customers. Is it scalable if your sales are going to be growing strongly? Now, do they have regulatory knowledge? Do they know the regulatory bodies that are affecting your product or service? Do they have contacts in those bodies? Do they know the cost associated in terms of regulatory aspects to your related to your products, if any? Technical ability. If you are offering a technical product, do they have the knowledge for that? Are they capable of providing customer support? Now, one of the things that people sometimes do not ask and is essential is the financial information. Usually, you should ask for the income loss results and the balance for the last 3 years, and this should be audited. Now, depending where you are, in some places like the UK, for instance, the financial information is public, so obviously it's easy, but in other places it's not easy, and sometimes companies will be reluctant to give this to you. You can use a third parties so they can send this information, but do not hesitate to ask. You need to know the financial information of who you are working with. Now, the planning expectations, both short and long term. By short term, I mean when you're just asking things to a potential distributor, right? You can talk about the opening orders that you are expecting for them to send to you or to start the business. What is their launch event experience, which is in the next line. I'll talk a little bit more about that. How are you going to train their personnel once they have your product, for instance? These are things that you will have to do quickly after starting a relationship with someone. Now, in the long term, you can have a sense of the growth of the sales that they are thinking, for instance. Maybe they can share something about this on the other lines they have. You can mention the monthly calls that you may have, or quarterly calls, or some kind of communication that you will have with them. When they will visit you, or when you are going to visit them, or maybe establish a schedule for that. What are they thinking in the long term? Now, the launch event experience, although it is within the short term, is described here because it's very, very important at the beginning when you arrive to a market. Have they ever done a launch event? If they did, just ask how many attendees they hosted. Where did they do them, these launch events? Did they did this in a place that would suit your products, or do they have the experience in something that is related to your products? Did they invite authorities? I don't know, from the local U.S. embassy, for instance. Very important that when you arrive to a new market, your launch event will be successful, and it requires a lot of effort to do a successful one. Okay, then more questions. Product lines, which and how many they have. Are they companies that are collecting brands? Sometimes they just get them so a competitor of them don't get it. Or do they have many brands, or do they have fewer brands? If they have fewer brands, obviously they will develop and put more attention into yours. If they have many brands, that's not the case. Of those brands they have, do they compete with yours? Sometimes it will be the case that you cannot avoid that. If it's a retailer, for instance, they may have many brands. But if it is a non-retailer, it may not. What other brands are they're planning to bring? What is their sales and marketing experience? Do they have qualified representatives for your product? Ask them specifically about them. Ask them to describe for you one of their typical representatives. What is their background? How long have they stayed with the company as an average? Ask about them. Then PR and advertising experience. Do they work with a PR agency? Is it a reputable one? How do they do that? Do they have a marketing manager in their company? Then customer support needs. Do they have what your product requires as support? Are they prepared for it? Do they have, I don't know, a call center, for instance? Do they speak different languages? Important. Then online presence. Do they have, well, I was just speaking about the marketing manager who may do this too. Do they have a quality website? Are they in social media? Is it updated? Now, from the legal point of view, it's good to have a draft of the contract terms to give them at an early stage as means of aligning your interest. And by this, I mean just the main aspects of your distribution agreement, just a one page with the main points. Then align your expectations with them. Reporting requirements, for instance. This is something that is very important. How are you going to do it? Is it going to be monthly, quarterly, and what kinds of reports? What information is important for you? This you should establish at the beginning. Now, how do you get references from them? Through you can ask them for their bank, trade references, personal references, and follow up on them. Usually we ask for these things and then we do not follow up. Very important to follow up on them. That's why they give them to you. Now, you can check through the U.S. Commercial Service or your local embassy. DMV is one of the most reliable credit bureaus that can provide an accurate credit history. International Chamber of Commerce around the world can also run a report on the business, their financial status or business partnerships, and more. Visit their company and meet their teams if you can. This is, I cannot stress enough how important it is to actually go to their companies and meet their teams. What I was saying on a previous slide on asking about their representatives, meet with their sales team, meet with their marketing teams, ask them, see how knowledgeable they are, see how they relate to the actual products they have, and imagine how they would relate to your products. See if they enjoy your product. This is very, very important, as well as them visiting your company and meeting your people. If they can come to your company, they should come to your company, actually. Receive them and show them your company, the areas that you can. There's maybe some areas you can't show, but you can introduce your people and likewise see how they relate to everyone. And then do always a final check, and it's like, what does your gut instinct tells you? Is there something that is feeling not right? Is there something that you cannot pinpoint what it is? If you feel something, just keep, if you feel that something is not right, for whatever reason, in any aspect, just keep asking and asking and asking. Now, a little bit about payment terms. Here you have a list of the payment terms sorted by most secure to least secure. Well, ideally, we all would want to be paid cash in advance. That can be done through a wire transfer or paid through a credit card. Of course, a less risky payment term, right? Then a letter of credit. Letters of credit has to specify clear terms of payment. They are, I wouldn't say complicated, but I would say you need to be very specific on how you do them. They can be irrevocable or irrevocable. Irrevocable means that it cannot be changed unless both parties agree. Revocable, it can be either party may unilaterally make changes, which of course is riskier. Partial credit, well, easy 50% or some percentage in advance, and then the balance you decide how many days. Of course, the balance also could be done through a letter of credit. Then documentary collection or draft, which sometimes is called a bill of exchange. This is comparable to a foreign buyer's check. Now, these carry the risk in that they may not be honored. However, in international commerce, the title does not transfer until the buyer pays the draft. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And then open accounts. You can always just sell with an open account in which you bill the customer who is expected to pay in the future within the prior established terms. Usually this happens along the way when you have a more developed relationship with your distributor. It may happen. You can also have always export credit insurance to cover yourself. Now, evolving payment terms throughout the relationship means that usually you change from 1 to 5 in a long-term relationship. Now, how many times, or not how many times, that as the relationship evolves, obviously you can expect to have sometimes problems on the payment. You need to have a clear policy in terms of how are you going to deal with it. How many times are you going to allow your partner to fail on the balance on the 30, 60, or X days? I mean, how many times are you going to allow them to have troubles until you take decisions about it? That's important to have clear before. And I think that's it. So stay in touch, and I'm going to pass it along to Frederick, who's going to talk about cosmetics regulations in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. This webinar is made in collaboration with Cosmoprof Worlwide Bologna. So hi, my name is Fred Lebreu, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Biorius. Biorius is a scientific and regulatory consultancy company dedicated to the cosmetic industry and recognized as a world leader in its field. So today I will tell you some words about the importance to be EU compliant. You want to succeed in Europe, you have a good product, a well-designed marketing strategy, and a lot of energy to spend on it. Is that enough? Maybe not, actually. To succeed means making money, but this also means not going to prison, not paying huge penalties, and not withdrawing your product from the shelves because of a regulatory issue. So one should not forget or underestimate the strict legal requirements enforced in Europe. Let's start with the spirit of the law in the EU. The EU cosmetics regulation has been crafted mainly for 4 reasons. First, to ensure the safety of consumers when using cosmetic products. Only safe products shall be placed on the Union market. Then, to protect the consumer against unfair commercial practices which could catch the consumer off guard. Next, to provide useful information to the consumer and, as a result, ensure that the consumer makes a well-informed purchasing decision. Last but not least, to ensure the proper functioning of the internal market and facilitate the commerce at the European level to the greater benefit of the cosmetic industry. It's important to remind that the definitions of cosmetic in the EU and in the US do not overlap completely. Actually, the concept of OTC product does not translate in the EU, and the definition of cosmetic is much, much broader. Even normal soaps are considered as cosmetics in the EU. So this is somehow a good news. As a single piece of legislation, the EU cosmetics regulation captures many product categories. So knowing the spirit of the law, what are your main obligations in this context? Actually, this is relatively simple to summarize. First, you have to get sure that your product label complies with the legislation. Then, you have to build a comprehensive product information file which proves that you control every aspect of your cosmetic. Next, you have to find a responsible person that will represent your company in the EU. Last but not least, you have to notify your product to the competent authorities. If you manage to do all of this, then selling your cosmetic in the EU will be trouble-free for you, and I'm going to give you more details about these 4 big requirements, but before that, I will answer the question, is it worth it? I mean, complying with the EU cosmetics regulation is not something to consider lightly. It costs, it requires some efforts. So what can we get for such an investment? Well, with an EU dossier, you can readily access all the EU member states in blue and access very easily the EFTA countries, namely Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Finally, some other countries like Ukraine and Turkey have a legislation very close to the European one. So yes, definitely it's worth it, as you can access a market of more than 70 billion euros with only one dossier. So let's move to the first big requirement, namely to make an EU compliant product label. Regarding the consumer information to display, the law is pretty clear. You have to label the name of the product, the name and address of the responsible person, the country of origin if not manufactured in the EU, the weight or the volume, the expiration date or the period after opening symbol, the precautionary use statements, the batch number, the function of the product if its presentation does not make it obvious, and the list of ingredients. This looks simple, but many rules need to be considered, and experience of this matter is key. In addition, specific issues need to be considered, such as the languages required on the label. Now coming to claims and advertisement, the EU has implemented many requirements, and notably a system called common criteria. All in all, this means that a claim has to be legal, truthful, well substantiated, honest, fair, and useful to take a well-informed purchasing decision. A claim is rarely black or white, and the task is actually not easy. So before validating a label, you should check with your regulatory experts who have a real experience of this market. The second big legal requirement relates to what we call the product information file. This PIF is a very important dossier, and we can really say no PIF, no market. This dossier is basically made of 4 parts. The most important one is the Cosmetic Product Safety Report. This is a file describing your cosmetic product in full details and containing a safety evaluation signed by a qualified toxicologist. Then comes the raw material documentation, well analyzed and well organized. The third point is the finished product documentation, meaning most of the tests, the product labels, and so on. Finally, the PIF contains the supporting documentation, meaning the efficacy test and other ways to substantiate claims, the GMP certificate, and the animal testing statement, for instance. Not having a proper PIF can lead to very expensive fines, and for instance, in Italy, up to 100,000 euros per product. So you see, it's very expensive. Then comes the notification of your product to the authorities via the CP&P online tool. Again, no CP&P number means no market, and you may not be able to clear the customs in some countries if you don't have a proper CP&P number covering each one of your products. A notification is not an approval from the authorities, so keep in mind that the authorities may contact the responsible person at any time. Finally, you will need a responsible person in the EU. This person or company will be the legal representative of your product. By default, the responsible person should be your importer, but many importers do not want to take this burden, and this is why companies like Biorius also play this role of legal representation. In case you want and can be your own responsible person, you must know the risk that it represents and be competent for this job. Indeed, you may receive questions from the authorities of all EU countries, and your dossier may get inspected. No need to say that a good technical competence are required, but also good language skills, as you may receive requests in 24 different languages. And finally, it's important to say that the responsible person is a person to blame in case of a compliance issue. So choose your responsible person knowing that. How does it work in practice? Well, the reviewing process is relatively straightforward. First, a formula review is conducted to quickly check the safety and regulatory compliance of your product, generate the list of ingredients, and evaluate the data gap. Once this step is completed, the regulatory expert and the toxicologist prepare the cosmetic product safety report. Then comes the evaluation of your label, and the required changes are highlighted. Once this is done, the product information file is completed and the product is notified. As a last point, a responsible person needs to be appointed, and of course, the product needs to be managed during all the time it is placed on the market. How long does it take and how much does it cost? This very much depends on your own decision. If you have the internal resources, you can try to do it yourself, but this can rapidly become a speculative exercise. Alternatively, a service provider such as Biorius will handle your product in about 20 business days, and the total cost remains very reasonable. Finally, I wanted to specify that my few slides here pertain to the EU cosmetics regulation, but other legal texts apply to your cosmetics. I will not describe them today, but many requirements are linked somehow to the EU cosmetics regulation. Beyond these core legal requirements, other aspects need to be considered, and on top of that, you have to live with national provisions. So it appears that the EU cosmetics regulation is just a tiny part of the regulatory constraint to consider when you sell cosmetics in the EU. The message that I want to convey today is minimize your business risk and outsource this activity to the right experts. It is clearly the best option if you cannot do it yourself properly, and if you prefer to focus on your core activities. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, please come to our booth, and we'll be happy to continue the discussion there. I wish you all a fruitful Cosmoprof Bologna. Thank you.